Hey, it's me, Michael. In this video, I'm going to share some of the ways that I've been able to apply SE in my everyday life. I hope you find it interesting. If you haven't seen my other videos in this series, then check out the links in the description below. So, SE in everyday life is, from my experience, very different from and a lot harder than the more formal SE you see on YouTube and Discord. I think the main problem with doing SE in everyday life is that we're often dealing with close friends, family, co-workers, customers, and because of that, there can be a lot more at stake. For me, the degree to which I go into an SE conversation and the way that I do it really depends on the situation. For example, is my conversation partner already familiar with SE? How much time are we going to realistically have for this? Is this a claim I've just overheard a friend or a colleague at work or a stranger making casual conversation? Is this a problem that we need to solve at work? Is this a deeply held belief that someone values a lot? Do they already know that I disagree with them because they know me really well? And is there a chance, therefore, that they might think that I'm judging them as wrong or trying to convince them that I'm right? So you can see there's a lot of factors to consider. I find that most of the opportunities for SE in everyday life arise in casual situations where it's not always appropriate to have long SE talks or to even break the SE talk up across a number of different occasions. And so in cases like that, I try to be really efficient and only ask 2 or 3 questions to understand what it is they believe, why they believe it, and how we can know if they are good reasons. There's a sort of implied consent to do that in most casual situations like that, I think. You just have to be careful not to dig too deep, especially since most people aren't used to defining the words they mean or explaining how they know something is true. So I try to be mindful of that and keep it short. In most everyday conversations, people make all sorts of claims when they talk to each other. Sometimes we're expressing a passing thought, sometimes an opinion, sometimes a strongly held belief. I tend to only inquire about those claims that I think I might disagree with when I have the energy and motivation for it, and when I think it's something they would want to explore, and when I think it would be safe for both of us to look at. When I do come across claims like that, I think just asking someone, what do you mean by that word, or what's your best example of that, or exploring the limits of what it is that they believe with a couple of questions like, when would that not apply, when would it apply, helps me to get more outside perspective and helps both of us to get more clarity around what it is that they actually claim is true. I nearly always discover when I do this that my initial impression and interpretation wasn't really that accurate. With casual SE type interactions, I can usually also get a sense of how confident someone is in what they say through the way they say it. So I hardly ever ask, how confident are you that that is true? And I often keep it short with 1 to 3 good why and how type questions. Let's look at how this might work with someone we know in a social setting. If they were to casually say something like, my partner wants to go on a cruise, but I can't go on bloody cruise ships, I might say, oh, why is that? And the conversation might look something like this. I'm not vaccinated. Oh, you didn't get the vaccine? Yeah, it hasn't been tested enough. It came out way too quick. So what's your thoughts on who should and who shouldn't have got it? Do you think it was okay for some people to get it, or do you think no one should have gotten it? Oh, if you're over 70 or unhealthy, then it was probably worth taking the risk, but I'm only 35 and I'm fit and healthy, so I didn't need it. And if it hasn't been tested enough, then I would have been crazy to get that. I can understand that. So from what you've seen though, what do you think should have been done for it to be tested enough? That's a good question. I'm not sure, but more than what they did, though, that's for sure. Okay, so what are you guys going to do then? Have you been to Tangalooma before on the Sunshine Coast? That place is awesome. So that's what it might look like, and in 2 or 3 minutes, I have some sense of what they believe and why they believe it. Sure, I don't know if that's the real reason, there may be others, but the reality of everyday life SE in situations like this is that you don't have time nor permission, nor is it always appropriate for long form, formal SE type talk. If I'm asked for my views, I'll be honest about what my views are so far, but also explain and emphasize that I recognize that I may be wrong and that I'm genuinely open to learning more about it. And from an SE perspective, what I'm doing is casting my net out as wide as I can, so to speak, to open myself up to as many perspectives as possible so I'm not stuck in my own bubble of information and potential confirmation bias with the opinions or beliefs that I hold. I think short SE interactions like this at least open up the chance for others to reflect on the quality of their confidence, whether they're aware of it or not. Maybe not then at that moment, but maybe sometime after our short discussion, they might think about that. Whether they do actually reflect is out of my control, but the value for me, even with a very short SE talk like that, is getting a bit more clarity around what people are claiming is true and why they might think their reasons are good reasons and potentially connect better and learn more as well. And yes, it might not make any difference to how confident they are or how confident I am regarding that, but that's not an outcome I'm attached to. My goal isn't to change confidence levels necessarily. It's primarily to learn and get an outside perspective to help try to falsify my own position. And secondly, to help others to get better clarity around the what, why, and how of the claims they're making, even if it's just a little bit of clarity. And I find that most people value that. With the people I'm closer to, if we do have the time and motivation for a longer SE style talk, I find that doing SE can be even more trickier because we value these long-term relationships even more. And people that are close to you already know your opinions on most things, and they might think that you're judging them as wrong or trying to convince them that you're right. I think these are the best opportunities to practice though and to improve as long as we pay extra attention to rapport and try our best to be humble. So getting consent up front and acknowledging that you want to have a good impact, reconfirm the goals you both have for the conversation, that you value the relationship over anything else, that you want to be open to learning from them, that you want to understand them as best as you can, that you want for both of you to get better clarity around what they're thinking and feeling in terms of what, why, and how of what's on their mind, that ultimately you want for both of you to be acting on the best information available to be living the best life possible. Whenever I do come across a belief that someone deeply values, though, and they want us to have a more formal SE talk about it, I might prefer to focus my questions on the related beliefs that they might hold about what life might be like if they discovered that deeply valued belief to not be true. So a great SE question, I think, for working that out would be something like, if X wasn't true, if it didn't exist, or if it wasn't the case, what would life be like for you or others 2 years or 5 years or 10 years from now? If the answer is anything like life wouldn't be worth living or the world would be a terrible place, then I might want to explore that secondary belief that life wouldn't be worth living or that the world would be a terrible place instead. I would generally be interested in why they think that. For those who aren't already familiar with the key steps of a more formal SE talk, these are the sort of questions that will be on my mind. There's no specific order, and they don't all have to be covered. Every situation will be unique. It might look complicated if you're not familiar with any of this, but it's not really. I think it's easy for people to learn, and you'll find specific examples of how to ask a lot of these types of questions in the SE course coming up from Street Epistemology International. So look out for that. And I'll have another playlist coming out soon with roleplay examples for each of these as well. I think most people value these types of questions, but occasionally you might come across someone who thinks that the type of question you're asking isn't helpful or shouldn't apply to their specific claim or situation, and that's fine. I usually get really curious when that happens about why they think that and try to learn about their reasons and how the criteria they are valuing instead for working out what is regular in their experience has demonstrated the ability to do that in spite of those problems of perception that I talked about in those earlier videos in this series. So that's my take at the moment on how to do SE in everyday life. Let me know what you think in the comments below. In the next video in this playlist, it's going to be the last one, so the next final video in this playlist, I'll be talking about why I value the quality criteria that underpins these sorts of questions that you typically see in more formal SE talks more than any other criteria. So if you're interested in that and haven't already done so, hit the subscribe and notifications button to get a reminder about that when it comes out so you can check that out. Take care and thanks for watching.